Welcome to Rocketship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Dohyun Kim, also known as YourAverageTechBro. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, super happy to be here and excited to chat everything React Native and building apps.
I was so looking forward to this because I watch quite a lot of YouTube videos, but mostly I watch YouTube stuff to stay up to date with topics, and I sometimes don't really like the people, but I actually watch your channel because they're very informative and it's real world stuff and it's very relatable because you're an app developer, you're a maker, you're at a stage where you're not making millions, but you're making a decent amount of money, which shows you kind of figured out a couple of things. You talk also a bit about technology, about AI, Cursor, React Native. So in this podcast today, we want to dive into your app, building real-world apps, a bit of your marketing experience, the technologies you use, why you actually try different backends and different technologies. And maybe we can also cover a bit about content creation. So maybe we get started with that. Tell us a bit about yourself. Who is the average tech bro?
Yeah, super excited to dive into all this. So what's up, everybody? I go by YourAverageTechBro on the internet. And if I could give a quick overview about myself, I am a full-time software engineer in my day job, but then part-time, I still love making content on the internet, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, also a lot more on YouTube lately, not as much on the other platforms. And then also I build a lot of apps. I've started building apps back in 2021. So it's been a 3.5-4 year journey at this point.
It's crazy how far 2021 is already away.
I know. It is crazy to think that I've been doing this for so long, because I remember when I first started off building apps, I first got started because on Twitter, I was really into like the indie hacker Twitter space. And in my mind, I was like, wow, I'm going to build an app in 1 or 2 months. I'm going to be making $20K a month. I'll be sipping on my pina colada on the beachfront. And it has been 3.5-4 years in, and I'm not close to $20K a month. I think right now my most profitable app is around 1.7K a month of recurring revenue. And then some other apps here and there that we'll also dive into, that a couple $100 a month or so, that is in the early stages too of building and stuff. But yeah, and I love building apps. I build full stack web apps. I also build mobile applications. It's really, to me, I'm not a super opinionated person on the technology. I just go with whatever works and whatever helps me ship the fastest that I possibly can. And that might be, maybe an unpopular opinion amongst like the really diehard techie engineers. But I realize I'm not an engineer first. I'm probably more of I like to call myself a builder. I don't like the word entrepreneur. It just feels a little, feels a little gross, icky, So I'm a builder first, engineer second. And because of that, I don't really care what technology I use. It's just whatever's the easiest for me to use.
Yeah, I had a previous podcast with my good friend Simon, and he always told me when people ask him what he's doing, he's just saying, I make things on the internet. That was like the short form.
Wait, is it Simon, the SaaS guy?
No, he was running by All the Code. He had this platform going on a while ago.
Okay.
He was quite big on Instagram, and So you're also an avid home cook, you said, right? And you do a lot of sports, right?
Say that again?
You do a lot of sports, right? And you're also a great cook. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say I'm a great cook, but unlike the typical stereotypes of an engineer who is like a man child or an adult child who can't live on their own, I'm pretty good. I would say I cook a lot. Most of my meals at home. I am pretty good in the kitchen. I work out regularly just to stay in shape. I can tell you do too. You're looking great over there too.
Thanks.
So yeah.
Yeah, I just had the weekly interval run today, like 5 times 3. I'm actually planning to do a marathon later this year. That's going to be my first. So
nice.
Yeah, it's an exciting year.
Nice.
Absolutely. But it's good to also code in between all the sport. So yeah, you said it. You have Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I think initially YouTube was the hardest to grow. You said somewhere.
By far for me. Go on.
What are the numbers at this point? It's like.
Right now, YouTube is at around 120K subscribers. I mean, this is a good time to record just because I had probably my most successful video to date.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it exploded. It's like how I make, how to code apps that actually make money. That was the title of it, which is also funny. I'll also dive into this because in that video, I talk about how building apps, if you want to build an app that makes money, don't focus on originality. Just do what works. Copy what other apps already works out there. And that video, I literally made that video with the same title and same thumbnail as another creator who made the same video on the same topic that got like, I saw it got 500,000 views. And I was like, oh, this works. All right, I'll make my own version of it. And it worked. So that's kind of ironic there. Yeah.
I think that's fine. It's interesting. I will link to that video. It's actually... So sometimes these breakout videos on YouTube are interesting. I think the video is good. I watched it. It has a really good flow. But it's not like this is the best thing you've ever done on your channel, probably. I think you have some other good videos as well. It's so strange.
Yeah, I think it goes to show that it's especially when you're making content for these algorithms, which is also important for making app building and app marketing as well, because I market a lot of my apps on social media. You have to figure out how to play the game of social media. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. A bit about marketing later. Let's get into a couple of apps. Your probably most successful app that you currently talk about is Montee. Maybe we can come back to Montee in a second and talk about the failures before, because I think you did quite some apps in the past. Do you still remember how many projects you had and how many are still active? Roughly.
None of them are. Probably only one of them is still active, but I think at the time that I built Montee was around the 13th or 14th app that I built. So over 3 to 4 years at this point. It's around that number. It's like greater than between 10 to 14. I don't have the exact number. It's something around that, around there.
But you said your income is not only from Montee, so some other app has to be still active, right?
Yeah, so I actually have another app that we just launched like 3-4 weeks ago. That we haven't really done like a big launch video on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok quite yet. Or I guess on TikTok and Instagram on like the main marketing account. But I've not used my own personal brand to push it, nor has my co-founder quite yet. And it's funny because it's actually an app that we built last year in 2024, literally January 2024, February 2024. The app it's called PerfectInterview.ai. It's basically AI-powered job prepping tool for any job in the world. Because you know how like software engineers, we have Leak Code and a lot of other jobs with similar things like investment bankers, consultants, PMs have similar platforms as Leak Code. So essentially it's a platform where people can upload their job descriptions that they're applying for, the resume, cover letter, and then we use AI to generate unlimited practice questions for them that provides feedback to their answers. And then you can also go through AI-powered mock interviews where you chat back and forth with like an AI model, AI mock interviewer to put you through like a realistic interview scenario. And we launched this a year ago. Honestly, I can't even tell you why we shut it down. I think we just came up with so many stupid reasons. We just didn't want to do it. But then, interestingly, even though we shut it down like last May, just from pure SEO and inbound inquiries, my co-founder who runs all the marketing, I'm the sole developer, and he's like he's a marketing person between the two of us. Even though we shut it down and stopped all marketing efforts back in May, he would tell me regularly, he's like, dude, every week I get a couple inquiries asking about Perfect Interview. We were looking at the SEO stats on Google Search Console. We were still seeing 3,000 clicks a month to the site, all organic search too. So at that point, we were like, okay, we have a saying that we like to say to each other: men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie. And the numbers looked too good because there was so much organic traffic, so much inbound inquiry. We were like, hey, let's rebuild it. So we just rebuilt it, relaunched it maybe a couple of weeks ago, and it's doing well. It's maybe done $600, $700, $800 of revenue, close to 1,000 now. So
is it only as available as a website, or is it by now also as a mobile app available?
Right now, it's only website. It's a pure web app.
What's the URL?
Perfect Interview.
I think I saw it because I read through some of your descriptions of last year's video, and I think probably somewhere you mentioned it.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely arrived on that page before. Mm-hmm. I really like the idea. It's one of those things where AI is actually helpful, and not just we throw AI on this because AI. It makes sense. What's the technology stack of that? You said you can upload like your resume and the job description, and then something's going on. I'm always curious. At that point, do you just pass that stuff to OpenAI and have the right context, or do you have your own model or something?
Definitely not a foundational model. I don't even do any fine tuning. I think 99.999% of developers don't need to do any fine tuning, and the base models are good enough. That's my hot take. I think people, and also my other take is that it really doesn't matter what model you're using, because once again, 99.99999% of developers, you're not making anything with a deep enough technical moat that one is going to vastly outperform the other model. So I personally I actually use Gemini for most of my AI stuff lately, mostly because of the really big context window. And I think their file upload, like retrieval augmented generation stuff, is a little bit easier to use compared to like Claude or OpenAI personally. We can dive more into those details later. But so the stack is Next.js, front end, back end. And then for database authentication, I'm a diehard Supabase user. I made the switch last year in 2024 to use all Supabase for all of my apps. Before that, I was using Clerk for authentication and PlanetScale for my database. Honestly, I had no reason other than the fact that I had Theo on YouTube. He was a big proponent of it, and I used to watch his stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do this. But yeah, I don't like using it anymore. I much prefer Supabase, all in one, so dead simple. So yeah, Next.js and Supabase and Gemini for LLM stuff. And in terms of how we generate those questions, I mean, yeah, we do use a lot of AI in the background. I guess it's hard because it's like people talk about like, oh, it's an AI wrapper, And I mean, I guess, yes, it's technically an AI wrapper because we do use AI a lot, but I don't know, everything is a storage wrapper.
Yeah.
So yeah, we use a lot of AI, and we do a lot of prompt engineering. There are some clever ways that we do use AI.
But really, like, mostly that stuff comes down to like prompt engineering, passing the right stuff to the model, whether it's Gemini, OpenAI, and then like making sure it replies in the correct way, it gives you JSON back or whatever information, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of the work. A lot of the deeper engineering work comes in because actually going through this process, we've run into some technical challenges where I was like, oh, we need to find some more creative ways to fix this. How can we make this work? So it's actually everything that's done before we send all the information into the AI endpoint, where a lot of the more clever solutions are being thought of right now, I think.
Is something in there that you can share one of those issues, or is that will competitors then?
No, we can totally do that. So,
Okay.
like right now for Perfect Interview, we're working on a brand new feature. It's called an interview co-pilot feature. I mean, essentially, it helps you cheat during interviews. Sorry, employers, my bad. But it essentially lets you upload a bunch of documents that you want into like an interview co-pilot as information context. And then when you're actually in like a meeting, then our app can listen in on the actual conversation going on. And if someone asks a question, we can answer those questions live with the context of the information that you uploaded into your interview co-pilot. Now that seems pretty straightforward, right? Okay, you have some documents and you just use it for RAG. You use AI to search through, pull out some answers. But speed and performance is really important as well. And if a user submits a 100-page document of like an Amazon earnings report because they're working as a financial analyst somewhere, RAG is still really slow on a 100-page document. So some interesting tricks that we had to do there was we had to do some pre-processing of the file on initial upload, where on initial file upload, we actually, once again, use AI to generate an overview, generate common questions and answers that are going to be asked about this document, store that in a separate SQL table, and then in the actual interview co-pilot session, as we start detecting questions, we do a first pass being like, hey, can we answer this within the pre-processed overview that we originally generated? If not, then return a bunch of keywords that we can look for and then do the full search in the actual document for a slower response, but it's a second pass one, like a deeper search. So that's an interesting engineering problem where when we first went out to build this, because once again, I only built this because I saw a lot of other competitors out there that existed with the same app. I'm like, I can do this in a weekend. Let's make this happen. But then I realized the performance issues was a bigger problem that we were actually facing. So that's where some of the more clever engineering solutions kind of came up.
Thank you so much for sharing this, actually. I'm always curious, like, what's going on in the background of these apps. And this is actually an interesting technical challenge. And it sounds more interesting than, oh, yeah, we pass some data to AI and have some context. And that's basically it with wrapper. Last question regarding that. Are you also using some sort of like vector storage? I know you can in Superbase store vector data. Is this anything you do, or is this already like a step further and nothing you need to worry about?
No, this one, I don't use any vector storage because Gemini, their API, it handles it all for you. You don't have to worry about it. Essentially, the reason why I like Gemini over the OpenAI API is last time I used OpenAI, if you wanted to do searching through a file and passing a file into your LLM context, they charge you for number of files that you're stored, like, just basic storage pricing based off of like per gigabyte or whatever, or number of files, right, per day. And then if you upload it, it stores it into a vector database, and then OpenAI retrieves all the information from that vector database. But it's still up to you to delete the file yourself. Whereas with Gemini, you just upload the file, and then you can do any context, any operations you want with it, and then it auto deletes the file in 2 days. So you don't incur any storage costs from there. And the API just makes it so simple that I don't even have to think about the vector database, the chunking, the embedding, because I just upload it. I trust Google's experts of chunking and embedding are way better at that stuff than I am. The Gemini API handles all of that for me.
I definitely need to take another look at Gemini. I'm honestly, I've just used OpenAI, a bit of Claude, and some other stuff like the Speechify API. I made like a text-to-speech thing with natural voices and 11 Labs and those sort of things, or image generation, but I haven't looked into Gemini at all. I always wanted to do this this podcast generation, which Google, I think you can access it somewhere at Google. Like I wanted to do this on the fly, but they haven't opened up that API. So I would love to combine past 5 documents into it and generate a podcast. That would be a cool app idea, but I think it's not possible yet. Okay, you also had a video, just for the background, on Supabase versus Firebase, I think, some time ago. So you built the same application, I think, with Firebase and Supabase, and I'm curious to hear about it. I'm honestly not sure if I completely watched it, but I know from surveys that Firebase is still widely used. Like numbers for Firebase are super high, but I'm like you. I'm more of a Supabase fan. Like I've been with their first beta and have followed all their stuff, and I really love it and use it for Galaxies as well. So, what was your take on the whole Supabase versus Firebase thing in the end?
At the end, it's a good question. I think at the end, I prefer the relational database of Supabase over the NoSQL database of Firebase. That was a big one. Then additionally, I think Google has some of the worst developer documentation in the world. I don't know why. I couldn't get it to work very easily. I think even if you, my biggest issue with Google's developer documentation is the fact that maybe this is a skill issue. Maybe I'm just a bad developer or I'm a lazy developer.
Me too.
Let's go back to talk about why I like Supabase first and where Firebase falls short for me. The reason why I like Supabase is because as a Next.js user, as well as a React Native user, I think they treat, especially Next.js, they treat Next.js as a first-class citizen in all of their developer documentation. Literally, copy-paste, it works. They're kind of in bed together, which is good for them. It's a huge ship that they're latching onto, and it's working. It's a good strategy. Whereas with Google, I think because they don't want to, necessarily latch onto Next.js, and they want to, push their own tool sets like Flutter or Angular or whatever they may be. I think the developer documentation is more typically written in plain JavaScript and not even ES6 syntax. It's ES5 syntax. And I just find the developer documentation to be much less detailed, and it requires a lot more brain power to be okay, here's this typical plain vanilla JavaScript script. Let's say, how can I adapt it to be used within Next.js? And I just find the developer documentation to be really lacking for my personal tech stack, at least.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, totally. I think I feel the same. I know the Supabase docs are really, really great, and finding something in Firebase has always been challenging. You suddenly are inside Google Cloud Docs and somewhere else, and it doesn't even feel like Firebase anymore, and you're looking at strange queries and thousands of parameters. Yeah, I definitely see that. While we're here talking about differences, have you tried Flutter in the past as well, as a competitor of React Native, and why did you settle on React Native in the end?
Yeah, I actually built a whole app with Flutter. It's called Todoey. I actually built it with a friend of mine on social media, engineer girlfriend. That's what her handle is on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. It was a social to-do list app where you have to take a picture of the photo of your task that you complete and then post it on a feed. I no longer work on it. She's the full maintainer. I haven't worked on it probably since August 2024. So August 2023, maybe. Yeah, a very long time, essentially. I have not worked on it on a very, very long time. And we built it with Flutter. And it was, I think Flutter, I would only use Firebase if I was building with Flutter because Flutter treats Firebase as a first-class citizen. So it's just really simple that way. And Flutter was okay. I actually, back when I used to work at Google, I used to work in Dart as well, like Angular Dart. And Flutter is based off of Dart. So I actually enjoy the language. I think it's a very opinionated language, which I actually personally enjoy because I'm so unopinionated. I need some guardrails to like keep me in check a little bit, or else I'm going to go crazy off the walls and do some rogue shit.
It's strange how you end up in React world. You should have stood with Angular then.
No, I've been back in college before I worked at Google. I was a React guy, and I had to learn Angular, and I wasn't really big on it. I didn't like it that much. And in my heart, I always loved React. React was always my go-to web framework whenever I would build applications. And then after building that app in Flutter, I didn't build Montee, which is my next mobile application, until over a year later. And because of that, I was basically starting fresh because I didn't remember any Flutter. It was a brand new slate. And at that point, I primarily chose React Native, specifically Expo, just because I already write a lot of React. I know I'm a pretty decent React developer, not great, but I can make stuff work. So I thought the learning curve was going to be a little bit easier. And I also liked Expo's just dev tooling. I think Expo was really, it kind of blew me away with how simple it is. I love their build process. You don't have to set build pipelines with code magic or whatever. You just link it to Expo and they handle all of it for you.
Yeah, so that's probably a good point to get into Montee before we then later again love to get into like a bit about ideation and a process for figuring out new apps and coming up with good ideas. Maybe because I'm a bit selfish and I'm at that point as well. But yeah, let's talk about Montee. So for people who haven't never used it, never heard about it, what is Montee in general?
So Montee is an AI meeting recorder, AI note taker. You have probably seen thousands of these out there because it is a super popular app. Some of the most popular ones are like Otter, Firefly, TLDV. Those are some of the bigger popular ones.
I think Wave is one.
Wave is super popular. Great that you brought up Wave too, because we originally started building Montee because at first we were like, oh my God, all right, we just gave up on our previous venture, my co-founder and I, and then we're just all right, what's the next idea? What are we going to do?
It's always,
and then, I was like, oh my God, what on earth can we build next? And a big portion of my video that went really viral about how to code apps that actually make money. The big thing I talk about is just copy what works, because when you copy what works, these people have already proven the market has paying customers. They're willing to put their credit cards and give you money for a certain product that serves a certain problem. So at that time, I was seeing a lot of apps like Wave was a really popular one about how they were just exploding in popularity. I think within 1 year, the founder tweeted out saying they're doing $4 or $5 million ARR within the first year of launch, which is insane. Granted, the profit margins, TBD, I'm pretty sure he scaled with paid ads. So depends what's more important to you, profit versus revenue. Don't want to get into that. And that was one app that I saw doing really well. And I saw another app doing really well. That was basically the same one. It was called Minutes.ai. Literally the same phone, audio record, transcribe, generate summaries, all that stuff. So I saw these two apps doing really well, making a ton of money. And I figured, all right, I'm going to build this. It's super simple. Let's do it. I did it, built it out with React Native, specifically with Expo, SuperBase on the back end. And that's kind of how it came to be. And we launched back in November or so. Within the first month, because my co-founder is pretty big on social media, his handle is Mang Duck on social media. I think are close to 200,000 on Instagram or so. We launched it on social medias, on TikTok and Instagram. Within a month, hit $1,500 monthly recurring revenue. It was the biggest MRR that he and I have both seen. But then after that, it has been pretty stagnant. It hasn't really been able to grow much. Essentially, our monthly churn is equivalent to our monthly growth. So we're stagnating at 1,500 or so. And we're still figuring it out. We're still trying to figure out what we can do to make it grow more. Do we want to grow it more, or do we want to just let it kind of pause for a bit and instead focus our efforts into PerfectInterview.ai? Because we're seeing a lot of good signals there right now. We don't know quite yet. We're of the mindset with building businesses and apps that we don't try to force things into existence. Instead, our strategy is more so ship a ton, throw a ton of things at the wall and see what sticks and just run with it from there. So Montee, the state of it, still TBD, still works, still actively maintained. The question is more so like, how much are we going to try to force business growth into it right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting position. It always feels like when I'm starting, so I'm one of my apps is making like, I don't know, I got 3 in-app purchases or subscriptions, and I'm like, oh, this is good. It's getting downloads. People are paying for it. That looks good. But it's interesting to see like you made a lot of money, which is 1.5K per month. It's quite good. But you already hit a ceiling there. So it's interesting that there are like all these ceilings. I thought like once I hit 100 or 1,000 per month, it's just going upwards through the roof and there's no limit. But yeah, churn will get you.
Yeah, I think with app growth, as long as with honestly, I think with growth of anything, even like social media and stuff like that, people think it's a lot more exponential, but I think it's a lot more step functions. You figure out one thing that gets you a ton of growth, then you kind of flatline. Then you have to figure out another thing to get you another big boost in growth. And then once that funnel or that pipeline runs out of juice, then you got to find another strategy to get another boost in growth.
So let's talk a bit about the technology behind Montee. I'm on the website, which means you actually have a web version as well. Probably thanks to Expo Router and the web version, or is it Next.js on the web?
It's actually Next.js on the web. So that's how we decided to differentiate Montee from the other competitors out there. You know, once again, I don't want to keep plugging that video, but I do think I have some pretty good points there. But one of my points was
it has already enough likes.
Yeah, exactly. It's gotten enough views. I'm okay if it gets no more views. But I only bring it up because one thing I really believe in is, and one thing I say in that video is copy first and differentiate second. So I copy the app first, so just building the mobile app. And then the way that I decided to differentiate was to provide web apps companion app with it as well. So you can record and transcribe using a meeting using your phone. But let's say you want a bigger desktop screen size to play around with it and like view the transcript or view the summary. That's where our web app comes in. And I actually did not build it with Expo Router. I thought about it, but I just knew that I can build really fast with Next.js. And once again, because Supabase treats Next.js as a first-class citizen, I just went forward with that there. So it's Next.js web app, and then the shared Supabase backend instance with my Expo app, and they communicate that way.
Yeah, and I mean, nothing against Montee in the app, but I just signed up, and it's of course a small thing, so it's probably not the biggest Next.js project on earth. Like with all the predefined components you can get, it probably like you probably set up the basic in a couple of hours and then plugged in like
totally, yeah. And especially with like AI cursor, I think I was able to spin up the initial version of the website within like a day or two, just to get something out there to differentiate it, you know. So,
do you have any kind of code sharing between web and mobile going on, like using a mono repository, anything fancy, or are you taking more practical approach, just like 2 projects and like copy paste?
Yeah, I think right now it's 3 separate repos. It's my Expo repo, my Next.js repo, and then my Supabase backend function, serverless backend function repo. In hindsight, I kind of wish that I just did it all in one mono repo because it's kind of annoying to context switch, and code sharing is virtually impossible. Or I don't do code sharing right now. I could probably do a lot more code sharing by publishing like a private NPM package or something myself, but I'm too lazy to do that. So there is code sharing, but it comes in the form of legitimately copying and pasting code from my Expo app into my Next.js app, and then telling Cursor, hey, rewrite this Expo code into Next.js code. And it works maybe 50% of the time. So
that's clever. So you started with the Expo app. I have a specific question because I probably 2 years ago when AI was kind of fresh, I went into it and made like what everyone made, generate children bedtime stories application. I learned a lot from that application. I learned that you shouldn't include your OpenAI API key in your application. I had a spending limit. So by the way, the application is still on the store. It's just not working. I think I will take it down. But I referenced it in some videos. It's actually in one of my most popular videos. That's funny again, which is kind of trash, but it's also about like building an AI app with just like some tools.
Yeah.
So having the OpenAI key or any kind of AI service you use key in your app is usually a bad idea. How do you handle this? Did you initially already build your backend, like combine it with Expo? What was your initial setup there?
Yeah, so the initial setup, I immediately I've been burned by exposing my public API key, not specifically for OpenAI, but for my AWS secret key before. And back in college when I literally made no money, and I think I got charged like a $3,000 bill. Horrifying. So I learned that lesson early on. So because of that, I knew that the API key, all the AI stuff, it was going to happen within Supabase edge functions for the most part. So that's where it all happened. So I did set up a proper Supabase backend that was completely separate, completely private from the client, so that no secret keys were going to get leaked.
Okay, that's good. But I still have some trouble whenever I think about this problem, and ChatGPT wasn't too helpful in the end. Your Supabase edge function is making the request to, let's say, OpenAI, okay? And your app is calling that edge function. Couldn't anyone with enough energy figure out that endpoint, that Supabase cloud function, and just use it? Like I make a post request from here to that edge function without ever using your app, and therefore circumventing your app?
Technically you could, but then within the Supabase edge function, you can make sure that the edge function is it needs to verify the JWT token before any request is being made. Basically, it has to confirm that the request is being made from an authenticated user. So if anyone
do you have accounts in Montee? Do you have to sign up before you can use the?
Yeah. You have to sign up and make an account before you can do any requests or anything there. But if you want to make an app where users don't have to sign in, you can use anonymous users within Montee as well. I actually just made a video on this too. But anonymous users basically it creates a legitimate user account for a user based off of their device, but there's just no phone number or no email attached to it. It's just almost like a UUID tied to that device, but it's still technically an authenticated user. So they can still make authenticated requests to certain Supabase edge functions. And then worst case scenario, if they become a really bad abuser, you can be able to trace back who is making that request, delete their account, they no longer exist, and they no longer are able to make requests to your endpoint.
So it always has to follow that scheme that you have some sort of JWT included with the edge function. So no unprotected edge function. That would always be insecure otherwise.
Correct. Yeah. I make sure all of my edge functions have to be verified with a JWT. So the user has to be authenticated before executing any logic. So far, I've been able to avoid any really bad abusers, bad actors in my applications.
That's good. Okay, that was part one of my question. Now the second part is all of these APIs come with a price as well for OpenAI. And I found this quite challenging to make transparent to a user. So some applications have the system of hey, buy 500 credits and one request is 5 credits. This whole credit thing, I don't think that regular users get it. They just want to pay a flat fee. How do you handle it in your applications? And is it a problem because people could abuse it eventually if they pay a flat fee? So sorry for the long-winded question.
Yeah, no worries. That's a really common question that I get asked in my videos too. It's but what if someone abuses, what if someone really racks up a ton of charges on you? I have a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I think it happens a lot less than you think. I think it's actually pretty rare. Number two, because I make sure any request is always traceable back to a user ID, I don't do this personally, but I probably should. But you can create a dashboard that shows the number of requests being made per user, and then you find the outliers there. And look, at the end of the day, it's your app that you build. You can cut anybody off, or you can impose any limits. Even if you advertise saying unlimited, nothing's ever truly unlimited. Everything has the limit does exist for literally everything in the world. And I've always thought if we get a really, really bad actor that is charging me so much money, I would just go in, email them being hey, your usage is way too high. We have to put some cap on you. So I think,
I see.
Yeah, you can always figure out ways to do it. I mean, might it upset the user? Yeah, but I mean, if they're charging and making you spend $1,000 a month on API credits and they're only spending $15 a month, then I think you have the right to do that.
Yeah, so my last app was using the Speechify API. So you put in text and you use a natural voice model and it gives you back really good reading. And I was also every app is saying unlimited access. But voice translation, and it's quite expensive to some degree. Like I made some like basic math and tried to figure out, okay, if a user would use this really daily for a year, what would be the credits? And then like make the in-app subscriptions based on that. But of course, you could like do a lot like per day. So I wasn't sure. But it's interesting to know that you take a practical approach to this and just say, hey, if it happens, then we cut off that user.
I think number one thing, this is going to sound so corny, and I hate saying this phrase, but like, what is it? Bias for action, it's actually legitimately important. I think so many developers, especially I see it on my comments as well, they get so tripped up, so scared about like, oh my God, what about XYZ scenario? What about ABC scenario? What if this happens? What if that happens? So many hypotheticals. And I'm like, if you keep thinking like that, you're literally never going to ship an app. It's going to be stuck as a GitHub private repo for the rest of its life. So I'm a really big proponent of just, you cross that bridge when you get to it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually more like that as well. Like I have a good friend who was building a web scraper or something, and he never shipped it because in the end he was like having appointments with German lawyers just to figure out like the terms of service he would put up in something. And I was usually like, Google, give me a free terms of service and privacy policy. I ripped that down, and let's wait. When the first person comes to sue me, we can update it and make it accordingly.
No, that's what I'm saying. If you are having an issue where a user is using your app so much that it's costing you a ton of money to run it, that is a great problem to have. I wish someone would love my app that much that they use it 100 times a day. That is the best problem in the world to have.
Absolutely. In terms of the Montee application, rest of the technology stack, anything fancy in there? Are you using like native Wind for styling, or did you really stick to like all the basics?
Once again, this might be a skill issue. I tried to use native Wind. For some reason, I was having a lot of compiler issues and I couldn't get it to work. So I was like, all right, vanilla styling it is. So no native Wind. It's super, super bare bones. Really, it's just a plain Expo app with SuperBase mixed into it. I don't even think there's any. I've installed so few NPM packages onto that.
That's good.
Onto that app. Probably just because I don't need it. So yeah, it's pretty bare bones for the most part.
I mean, I love it. I love that it's an easy stack and that you're making money out of it. And you can just move on to the next project or scale that one up. Depends completely on what you want. So let's get a bit back a couple of steps into ideation. I did a lot of this earlier this year, as I was also like, this whole YouTube thing is cool, Simon. You reach 100K subs and like you have this platform, but what about actually building something real? That would be cool, wouldn't it? So I tried to figure out something that works, and I have two apps that actually kind of work. One is like a nutrition calorie tracking app, but very simplified and like add your calories, just add calories, no 5 views and GoPro and anything. And the other one is actually interesting enough, like a to-do management system following the Eisenhower metrics, because I looked up also keywords and sensor tower data, and I found one app that is actually making a lot of money, and it looks like it's made in the 90s. So I remade that application. But still, my whole approach feels very like I don't really have a clear structure. I try to come up with keywords and put them into a tool called Astro and see like, is it popular and how difficult is it? But at the end of the day, I'm kind of limited because I only think of keywords that are like around me and things like I don't discover, like I don't have a dog, for example. I would never go into any keywords related to dogs or whatever dog owners do. So what is your process to come up with keywords, try out keywords, or finding a good idea?
Yeah. So I'll say I am not an ASO or even an SEO expert in the slightest. And that's not even my main marketing strategy necessarily. I rarely go research ideas with that in mind, because I know for me, I feel like there's a saying about like everybody that has a hammer, someone that is an expert at a hammer looks at everything as a nail. Yeah. My hammer is social media marketing, organic social media videos. And more importantly, my co-founder, which I think is really great to have, like I'm a dedicated technical person. He's a dedicated marketer.
That's so good.
His sauce is organic social media. So we're both pretty good at organic social media. I think he's better than me at it. So specifically like short form vertical video. So because of that, we don't do any keyword research. Instead, our version of keyword research is what is the magical wow moment, the magic moment that we can have in an app that can let it go viral on social media. So we really optimize our applications to be marketed on organic social media. That's just only because that's what we know and that's what we're good at. But I know there's probably a lot of ASO, SEO experts out there that are like, oh my God, there's a huge arbitrage opportunity with this keyword. Like, we got to build something in this space. That's not me. I can't really build that out. So I don't really know how to approach ideation that way. But because our strategy is largely based on organic social media, our strategy, at least up until now, we've been working together since January 2024. So coming up, we've just passed the 1 year mark together. But our strategy is actually just scroll through social media, see what tools we are getting advertised to. And because we are both content creators on social media, a lot of brands reach out to us as well, being like, hey, can you promote our app? And that's just market research for us, being like, this app wants to, like, what is this app going to do? It's like, oh, they're just this AI app. Like, okay, cool. Like, we'll keep that in the back pocket. We'll keep that in our idea log. So granted, we do a lot of brain rotting on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, but we also have moments of intentional scrolling where as we scroll, if we see an interesting marketing video from another SaaS company or another brand, we're like, oh, that was really clever. We should do something similar to that. So we have a huge backlog, like a huge catalog of ad formats or marketing videos that we can kind of copy and take inspiration from there.
What do you think? Which platform is the best for this kind of research? Because I'm mostly on X, because that's like where the tech people hang out and where we share things about React Native and stuff. A while ago, I was on Instagram, but I felt Instagram, especially for developers, is mostly like taking shiny pictures of your desk with the perfect coffee setup. And
yeah.
And I mean, I was on TikTok as well and had some popular videos, but I wasn't never sure what I want to get out of TikTok besides getting a lot of subscribers, because the conversion, like, people from TikTok are not really coming to me to learn React Native. They want some funny and engaging content, and yeah, then it's dropped off. But so
yeah.
Is TikTok the best way? I heard that many people do like short videos on TikTok about apps, and creators say, oh, here's this app, I use this, and like, is it the best platform for that stuff?
Personally, I think Instagram is way more explosive in growth than TikTok. I myself and my co-founder, and actually all of my content creator friends that we all started on TikTok, I don't know a single person that still considers TikTok their main platform. Everybody's turned to Instagram or YouTube being their main one, actually. And even in terms of marketing apps, I actually find that like Instagram more consistently will make your video go viral. We just find it more explosive lately than TikTok. I think TikTok really focuses on like their TikTok shop feature. Good for them. People are printing money off a TikTok shop right now, but that's just not us, because we're not an e-commerce business trying to sell via TikTok shop. And in terms of which platform is best to actually get ideas, honestly, I think X is pretty good. I'm pretty active on X. I don't post on X, but I scroll a ton on X because I think that's the best place to get the latest tech development, latest products that people are building and stuff like that. But in addition to that, I do spend a lot of time scrolling on TikTok specifically and seeing like what SaaS products am I going to be marketed. Granted, 99% of the time, you're not going to get any SaaS products marketed to you. You're just going to get some silly brain rot video. But every now and then you find some app idea. You're like, oh, why is this app being marketed to me? What is this trying to do for me? And then from there, that kind of gives me some ideas. Also, like Instagram, primarily just because if I make a lot of developer content, they kind of bucket me. All right, this is going to be like a little bit of a long tangent. So essentially, our thesis, my co-founder and I, is that we are going to build apps that we can market on social media. And what group of people are we really good at marketing to social media? It is corporate people working in corporate America, because I'm a software engineer. He used to be an investment banker. A lot of our content revolves around working in some corporation. So because of that, Meta knows this, and they'll target us with ads specifically for companies that are trying to target corporate people. So as we get hit with a ton of ads, I get so many SaaS products being advertised in my feed all the time. And I use that also as market research, being like, what are other people building to market towards a corporate audience? So actually just going through all the Meta ads that I'm getting served on Instagram has been pretty good market research for me to see, all right, like what are people building to market towards people like me, other corporate America workers, which is also the group of people that I want to market to with my products as well. Sorry, that was a little confusing, long-winded answer. I hope that kind of made sense.
I think it totally makes sense. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about TikTok as well. At some point, I was using it way too much, and then I put on like a 15-minute daily limit for myself that turns off the app afterwards, because you can like easily get lost in it. I don't know. I never thought that was possible until I used it and like watched all those strange videos. But the algorithm is incredible on TikTok in showing you like the mix of things. Like then you get something funny, then you get something educational, it's just like incredible. Before we run out of time, two last things. So one thing I was thinking of while you talked about like social media marketing and stuff for your application is, if you didn't have your co-founder who's really good on social media and stuff, do you think you could still pull off that stuff? And where would you focus?
I do believe I could, because I've actually done it before without a co-founder as a pure like solo guy that did both engineering and marketing. I think the app is still up. I don't know if it still works. It's called Research.ai. It's essentially just like a, AI chat PDF tool for people to take notes with AI powered stuff. So that was an app that I did have a co-founder, but he was doing a lot more like design, product, customer support stuff, whereas I was like engine primarily marketing there. And with that application, it was a lot doing both engineering and marketing. But essentially the way that I would do it is I would do engineering. This is an engineering week. This is a marketing week, So it's like, I just go really deep focus for an entire week at a time to focus on engineering or focus on marketing. Because I think as an engineer, it's really easy to get lost in coding, because I find coding to be pretty fun, So yeah, it takes a lot of discipline.
If you say marketing week, the videos you create, are they like real app marketing, or are this the, hey, I'm a builder, see what I built last week sort of videos? Which of those work?
This was a dedicated channel, dedicated page strictly for that Nexus Research app that was strictly devoted for marketing the app specifically. So the way that I did it was, I knew that my primary audience was going to be students. Man, in hindsight, I should have continued working on that app. I had a pretty good marketing strategy. So the app was a tool targeting students to help them read and take notes at the speed of AI, right? So what I did was I would make short form videos with like crazy articles that I find on the internet. I think one of them was like, somehow I found a study on which medicine specialty cheats on their partner the most. Like, what the heck, right? So what I would do would be, I'll be like, that'll be my opening. I just found this crazy article about which medicine specialty cheats on their partner the most. But because I'm too lazy to read it myself, I'm going to summarize it using nexusresearch.ai. Let's see what it says. And then I'll just show all the screenshots of the app, being like, oh, this is what it says. XYZ specialty cheats on their partner the most because of XYZ reasons, blah, 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 blah. What do you guys think of this, right? So it was a very organic video that had a lot of shock value. I was like, what is this article going to say? And I rarely explicitly even mentioned the product, aside from just like saying, hey, I'm too lazy to read it. I'm using this app to summarize it all for me. So it's a very organic and natural plug into it. And with that strategy, it was kind of an infinite content like hole. As long as you just find an interesting article, just feed it in and it'll handle it for you. So you're right. Like those videos, the hardest part really was just finding the spicy articles. So that would take maybe on a bad day, 1-2 hours to find 1 hour to find a really good article, plus film the video, plus edit it and get it out. So yeah, like during those marketing weeks, I would just take a lot of time to batch find a ton of articles and like just get a lot of videos out ready and prepared for like a week or two. And then I would just go back to developing. Sometimes I wouldn't do the whole marketing week. I would just do a really focused sprint on marketing just to make sure I have a good backlog of videos. Sometimes that would take 1 day. Sometimes that would take 3 to 4 days. And then whenever I reached a certain like limit where I felt like, okay, I have a pretty good backlog of marketing videos, I can go back to focusing on building. Then I would go back to building there.
I see. I think, yeah, that's the area where most developers struggle the most. We all love to build stuff and technical challenges. And what you said before, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's so often that I see, I don't know, Supabase comes up with a new feature. And I'm like, I should build something with real time. And then I'm like, Simon, that's totally not the right way to start a new project.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not anti that. I think building for the love of building is great. You should totally do it. I do it too. I'll just build random stuff because I'm like, oh, that'll be kind of cool. I want to use this new technology, right? But I think you have to make a really clear distinction. Like, what apps are you building just for the fun of it, and what apps are you building because you legitimately want to make a living off of it and have it be your primary source of income? And with that point of view, you've got to be like very diligent. I'm not perfect. I fall into traps of building features that literally nobody wants just because I think it's cool and it'll be fun to build. So I'm still working on that as well. But I think one thing my co-founder and I say a lot to each other when we're deciding, oh, what feature do we build? Do we build that or do we build this? It's what is the thing that we can build that will most immediately add value to the business? Is it going to be improving your test coverage? No, that's not. Is it going to be this tiny UI tweak? Most likely not. So I think that whenever we're having a difficult time figuring out what are we going to build next, we always think of it in that framework. Like, what will this do for the app, and will it help grow the app as a business a lot more?
The answer is always dark mode. Always the dark mode. That's the most important feature.
It's a P0. 100% it's a P0.
All right, we're almost through. One last question. We talked about Expo, we talked about Next.js. What is your preferred way to build apps right now? Would you do mobile, or would you do web, or would you always try to go universal? What is your approach for like the near future right now?
I'm a web developer at heart, and I primarily prefer web apps as much as I possibly can for a couple reasons. Number one is, if you ever ship a bug, you can ship an update, a fix for it instantaneously, and everybody gets the update. You don't have to worry about app versioning. App versioning is such a huge headache for a variety of reasons. And then number two, the payouts are way faster on web versus mobile. Like the App Store and Google Play, I think, have a 40-day and 30-day pay period, respectively. Whereas with Stripe on the web, you get the money deposited into your bank account within 2 days. So I think from a business perspective as well, that makes your cash flow management a lot easier because, yeah, like I think when we first launched Montee, we had an app on the first month. It made $2,000. We're like, oh my God, this is amazing. But we didn't get the money until like a month and a half later. So we couldn't really use that money to reinvest in the app until a month and a half later. So that pay period was pretty painful. But yeah, so those are the two main reasons. Number one, web is just easier because you don't have to deal with app versioning, backwards compatibility for older versions. And then so that's like the engineering benefit of a web app. And then the business benefit is just the whole cash flow payout period stuff. So I really just try to build out web apps as much as I possibly can. But at the end of the day, developers and other techies hate apps, but common, like normal consumers, they love apps. So I don't have a universal answer. And it depends on an app by app basis. So you got to figure out just for your app, what is the best experience for the user.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately probably also what you prefer to do. So I really love mobile apps. I love having an app on my phone installed, and it just brings joy to me whenever I work on my own apps. Whereas, working on Next is okay, but it just does not give me the same nice feeling.
I agree.
All right, Dohyun, that was epic. I really enjoyed the insights into like app development and all the behind the scenes. I hope the people listening to this enjoyed it as much as I did. I would love to talk hours more about Gemini and AI and stuff. Maybe we can do it later this year again when we have some more numbers about Montee or your next application, and then you can come back on again.
Yeah, I would love to come back on. Let me know anytime you need another guest. I'll be here.
Cool. Where can people find out more? I will, of course, put Montee and your social profiles in the comments. What's the best place to check out your stuff?
Definitely YouTube is my primary platform right now. So that's the best place to find me. And you can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and X at the similar handles, YourAverageTechBro. But definitely YouTube is where I make the most content, the most active. So catch me there.
Awesome. Thank you. And we will catch up again later this year.
Sounds good.
Bye.
See you.
Thanks for joining today's episode. My goal is to share interesting stories and insights into the world of React Native development. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And on Spotify and Apple, you can leave up to a 5-star review. Because podcasts, and especially niche podcasts like this, are hard to find, subscribing and leaving a review does help me a lot. On top of that, check out my React Native courses on galaxies.dev that cover a variety of topics from getting started to building and publishing your mobile app. Finally, you can share today's episode with a friend or colleague who would enjoy the topic of the show. If you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, find me on X or leave a comment on YouTube. And last but not least, thank you for listening and happy coding, Simon.